I wish that this assignment does well. Well, I just have to wait and see if that worked. Anyway, so Obsession. It is a 2025 supernatural horror film that was written, directed, and edited by Curry Barker. The film follows Bear, who is played by Michael Johnston, after he makes a wish on a novelty One Wish Willow toy. He wishes that his friend Nikki, played by Indy Navarrete, would love him more than anyone in the world. However, this ends up taking a horrific turn when Nikki seems to become possessed with the dangerous, toxic obsession consuming her. Throughout the film, we follow their romance that's used to mask the true horror behind their situation. The director, Curry Barker, started as a YouTuber who makes short films on the side. Obsession is his second feature-length film, and he had a huge part in its creation. In a YouTube interview with the channel Collider Interviews, Barker says that the conception for this film started as an idea about an obsession, and that's it. That's literally all he had for his idea. But this came after watching an episode of The Simpsons where Bart finds a monkey's paw, and it starts being devastating.
Well, it's interesting. You know, I had this idea for a while about um, like an obsessed person, and just the relationship and how that could go crazy. But it didn't have anything to do with a wish. It was just this idea of like an obsessed relationship and codependency and like kind of diving into that. But then I was watching an episode of The Simpsons one day. It was I booked Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and I was in the episode, and we were all gathered around to watch it. But it was live, live television. So before that episode, there was an episode of The Simpsons, and it just happened to be the episode where Bart Simpson has like a monkey paw and is making wishes, and it's like wreaking havoc. And I just was like, oh wait, that actually could lend itself really well to this like obsession idea.
For a while, he did think about where he wanted to take that idea and like what he wanted to do with it. In that interview, he explains his development process and how he wanted the film to be based around, some sort of cursed object that causes obsession. Barker himself even plays a role in this film, using his own voice for the black cat representative that Bear calls when he wishes to alter his wish. Barker does a full scene as a voice on the phone where he explains the important lore that the One Wish Willow cannot be altered in any way. Also, it's important to note that Bear specifies he wants to alter the wish, not get rid of it in any sort of way. He doesn't want Nikki to be freed of whatever entity is controlling her. He doesn't want any of it to end. He's low-key kind of okay with her being obsessed with it. He just wishes, she was a little more normal. He's okay with basically everything else staying how it is, with the implications of Nikki continuing to not be in control of herself, as he just, wants her to be more normal. Barker's character finds this kind of odd, and asks Bear if he wants to speak to Nikki, to then put what sounds like her, screaming, on the phone. In a different interview with the YouTube channel In Creative Company, Barker also explained that he asked his mom, who was a graphic designer, to create the packaging that holds the pivotal One Wish Willow prop. Replicas of this prop were previously available at onewishwillow.com, and the site appears like an actual online store for the actual willows, minus, some disclaimers that they are not real and their magic is not real. I personally find this tidbit to be very interesting as someone who would literally like to do that exact thing for their job. Obsession features a soundtrack made up of 26 songs that were written by Rock Burwell. It sort of does this thing where it likes to kind of trick you into thinking that, this movie may be just like a normal romance between the two characters. On the surface, the music seems familiar, unassuming, composed of warm, happy, and hopeful melodies. Kind of like the music you would see in like a romance film or a rom-com or something like that. But if you listen a little closer, you can hear the songs where they start to turn. Some notes are in the wrong key, and at times the songs even feel hollow. Out of these 26 songs, two of these, to me at least, especially seem to stand out with this. This being Love's in the Air Part 1 and Love is in the Air Part 2. These songs specifically seem to serve as bookends to Bear and Nikki's romance. They play in two major scenes that are supposed to feel particularly romantic. Note that I said supposed, and we will get more into that in just a minute. So, Love is in the Air Part 1 plays near the beginning of the film after Nikki and Bear are officially together. We see them in a dating montage where they do typical couple things as this track plays in the background. Eventually, the charming, gentle music begins to feel wrong. Just wrong. The notes sound out of place, and yet we are still shown the same coupley type of content between Nikki and Bear. While this whole situation, the whole like Nikki being obsessed with Bear thing, the whole them dating thing, and all of that is this might be what Bear wants, but we, as the audience, know that this doesn't sit right. This whole ordeal. At this point, we already have a pretty good idea that Nikki isn't really herself, and something likely has possessed her in some sort of way. Based on how she's been presented to us earlier in the film, we can deduce that Nikki's acting out, cool, way out of character. This track serves as the first major red flag that something isn't healthy. A similar thing happens again at the end of the film. This is where we are met with Love is in the Air Part 2. However, the setup for this scene is a little bit different than the other one. Right before this part, we watched Bear as he tried to induce an overdose with some pills from his medicine cabinet, hoping that, once he dies, this whole wish will go away and Nikki will be okay, and she'll just behave the way that she would normally. And I think it's also important to note that he literally did not feel this way. He was not really concerned about ending it at all and stuff, and he was just okay with it all to keep going until she went and killed their friends. Like she killed them. They were in her way and she couldn't have that. So only now is he finally like trying to put a stop to this. After he takes those pills, he just sits there in the bathroom for a few moments, thinking about what he did, thinking about what's gonna happen, until he eventually chickens out and goes to, try to expel the pills that he had taken. However, while this happens, in the faint in the background, we hear the telltale sign that somebody had opened a One Wish Willow, which he had brought those home with him a little earlier in the scene because he was trying to have someone else make a wish that contradicts his own wish in hopes to, try to fix what happened without having to go the full way. So around this time is when Love is in the Air Part 2 begins to play, when Bear slowly leaves the bathroom to join Nikki in the living room. At this point, he seems to sort of like, I don't really know how to describe it. He just doesn't really seem like himself either at this point. The couple kisses as the music continues to play, lulling us into believing that this film maybe could have a happy ending. And, maybe the couple will stay together and maybe everything will turn out okay. Only for the music to suddenly shift as Bear dies from his overdose. We see the possessed Nikki also try to, get rid of herself, not wanting to be alone without Bear, until finally she's freed from whatever had been possessing her, and she is left to come to terms with everything that had just happened to her. Now, I went and saw Obsession in theaters, a little after it came out, and I thought the movie was very interesting. I also this entire time, like literally the entire time watching this movie before I even knew this assignment was a thing, I literally was there sitting talking about the music and being like, it's so interesting how they did the music, how it sounds like this, and what the heck they're doing with it. It sounds right, but it sounds wrong. It's very interesting, and I think this whole movie is interesting too because it's kind of like at the end of the day, it's kind of like told from Bear's perspective, and you kind of it's kind of like unreliable narratory, right? Where like we see what he thinks is happening, and some of these elements, these like rom com elements that are peppered throughout the movie, with like the music, like the whole like dating montage scene, is like from his perspective. He thinks everything's fine, but underneath the surface, hidden in like the music and stuff, is the truth that it's not okay, that Nikki's possessed and that nothing is okay. So I just thought that was very interesting. And thank you so much for watching this video.